Welcome. I just want to go over a little bit about what I've been working on and how I've been using Kiro to work on creating some templates. So I have a project called Atlantis that I work with, and basically it's a platform that is used to help deploy serverless applications. So it's a platform framework of templates and scripts that basically help you automate your SAM configurations and deployments on AWS. It goes everything from managing your pipeline to having starter code to start a project with, to even Kiro steering documents to help get Kiro off the ground so that you're not so worried about the infrastructure, the back end infrastructure in terms of the CI/CD, the testing, and how things come together, with security and all that sort of stuff, that you don't need to worry about any of that. You just basically get started with essentially a shell, uh, a a housing frame essentially, so that you can put your own business process and your own logic and what it is that you need in the Lambda function or cloud infrastructure that you need for your application. So one of the things that I've been working on recently is creating a pipeline that does cross-account deployments. And a lot of times you'll just see a cross-account deployment be, okay, I build it, I run it in a test environment, then I take that artifact and I just, you know, approve it. Well, I didn't really want to do it that way. I wanted to make sure that each environment has its own build that gets rebuilt for each environment, because the this platform, this framework relies heavily on conditionals. Like if it's a test environment, it doesn't need to have all the alarms, bells, and whistles that a prod environment does. If it's prod, it should deploy gradually rather than all at once. That way, if you deploy gradually, you can hopefully pick up some errors and automatically roll back before a lot of your users hit those errors. So it's more of a controlled environment. And we also wanted to make sure that we also can have a beta environment too. That way we can have a prod and beta and maybe do some like traffic switching and blue-green deployment as well. So in the past, how I did that was you have a test branch, a main branch, you merge your code changes into test and it deploys a pipeline, and that's all good. Then you merge changes into a main and then it deploys there. Well, for cross account, I wanted to do something a little bit more stable, and I wanted to be able to deploy deploy an application, test it out, and then promote it essentially. So like once that test passes, I'm going to promote it, do a manual promote, and then that will then copy that commit essentially as a zip file, as an artifact to the next account, production account, and then that will automatically pick up, and you can manually or not manually approve. Maybe it's automatic, so you can either manually approve or automatically approve what you receive from the test account, and then deploy that in like a beta branch or a beta, and then you can once that's good, you can then approve the next step. So what I basically worked with my web chat client, ChatGPT, and basically it knows pretty well how I work in terms of I work. I'm security conscious. I work on AWS, serverless, platform engineer, software engineer background, DevOps, and developer experience. So whatever it is that I create needs to be maintainable as well as usable and reusable even amongst a wide spectrum of individuals, whether they have a lot of experience or just starting out. So it already knows all that. So when I interact with my chat client, it it takes all that into account. So then it gives me better. It's a better conversation because it already knows where I'm starting from, and it already kind of knows where it is that I need to go. It also I've requested that it challenges me, that it doesn't just take my design idea is that it challenges me to adhere to questions that it should ask me questions that a senior cloud architect would ask, a senior security analyst would ask, and a senior software engineer would ask too if they were reviewing my ideas and my design. So after a few rounds with that, I basically came up with this preliminary document, or actually the AI chat came up with this preliminary document in which it just goes over kind of our thought process, some of the ideas that we went back and forth, and then the ultimate solution that we decided upon. All this, I keep all my specs and steering documents in the repository of the project that I'm working on. So if you wanted to check these out, it is underneath the specs document 0040. That's the version that I'm working on right now, pipeline with promotion approval. I'll put that link up there, and then you can go visit the repository on GitHub and you can check it out. But basically, the preliminary document is what we received, or what I received from my chat client after we were like hashing things, design ideas. It was probably about a day or two process. I even discussed it with our platform, or our cloud architect, as well as a cloud engineer, to get their input, and it seemed like it was pretty much on the right path. And I knew that there were some things that the AI was giving me that I'm like, gosh, that sounds a little complicated, and I don't know how I would actually do that without having to implement a Lambda function. And then if you're implementing a Lambda function, and then you're implementing this and that, all on top, it's no longer a lightweight pipeline. But those are things that, could be, because I didn't want to deploy a Lambda function for each pipeline. So a companion Lambda function for each pipeline, because that would mean that if you have 10 pipelines in the account, then you're going to have 10 Lambda functions, and you got to manage those in terms of it's serverless, but yet at the same time, you still got to upgrade any packages that you're using, any libraries you're using, or even the runtime. You got to update the runtime. So I really didn't want to go that route. I really wanted it pure. I don't know. When you tone it, just basically a CloudFormation template. I really don't want to go any further than just being able to deploy a CloudFormation template and not have a whole bunch of things to manage. So a lot of stuff that is just managed for me. So the preliminary design does kind of go into a few things that I just kind of knew wouldn't make it into the final design, but that was okay. So again, this preliminary design was probably, a few questions that I went back and forth with my chat client. Now, I don't have my chat client be the designer because it doesn't know my code base. It's just basically an outside consultant type thing, and then I bring what we discuss, and with my expertise of knowing the code base and stuff like that, I bring it to that, so I kind of know, and I can kind of answer its questions and steer it in the right way. But then there's some things that I just don't know much about. So then when I bring the output from my chat client, I bring it in here as like a preliminary design, kind of like ready for more of a discovery phase, essentially. So more planning. And I don't turn this right into a requirements document in Kiro. If you've worked with Kiro, I use the spec-driven workflow. I don't vibe code. I have a plan. I formulate it. I plan it out. I iterate. I ask questions, and then I come up with a requirements document. I have videos on this, so I'm not going to go into that. But basically, I gave Kiro this preliminary document. I said, we're still planning. Go over this. See if there's any gaps, questions, stuff like that. Look at it as if you're, I always wanted to be looking at it as if it's a senior level security engineer, cloud architect, and platform engineer, software engineer. I always tell it, look at it like this, and find any gaps, find any concerns, find any inconsistencies, find anything that, and I have a whole list of other specs like lightweight, CloudFormation based, all that. and because we're working within a framework, a well-described framework, look at all the other templates in this repository, because it's a repository of templates. Look at all those, see how we define modules, see how we create these other templates. What are the patterns that we use? Um, think about that. The parameters, how we use parameters, how we make sure that they are loosely coupled yet can easily come together and receive the parameters and the values and the conditionals that they need to be able to deploy this and be modular and all that sort of stuff. So there are steering documents, and I can show the steering documents for that. So basically what I'm getting at here is I don't just sit down in front of Kiro and start typing. I have a good library of steering documents that I use for this project, for any project. I do know about cloud development. I'm a software engineer. I've been working with AWS for a while now. I'm certified. I know enough. But there are still areas that I don't know much about. But I can kind of like tell when we're getting off track. So I come to it with some experience, but also wanting to be challenged and wanting to have better ways of doing things. So I have all that. So after I tell it to review this, I ask it to ask any clarifying questions, come up with any recommendations, and put that into questions.md. So it did that. It went through, it had a whole bunch of questions. I had to answer them. There was like 20 some questions, I think. Yeah, 21 questions, 22 questions that I had to answer. So I answered them, and some of them were like, where I had to clarify, and I had to say, no, let's go this route, or it gave me like option A, B, and C, and I said, let's go with B. Or sometimes, I could say, let's take A and let's mix a little bit of C in there, and I was able to do that. And then I said, okay, I've answered all your questions. Go ahead and review. And are there any more questions? If there are, ask them in questions 2, which it did. So we went through questions 2, and this time, it was like able to clean up quite a bit, because there were a lot of loose ends, unanswered things that I just really wanted to know about. Because again, the previous chat did not have any of the code base. This is actually looking at the code base, looking at the idea, comparing it to the code base, and instead of just taking the idea and running with it, is looking at what's actually there and how would this fit in. What are the patterns that are being used, which is very important. That way you're not just vibe coding and bolting things on. It's actually, we're looking at a way to integrate my idea into the existing code base. Which if you have a strong code base, great. If you have a crappy code base, integrating into the current code base, you garbage in, garbage out. But this is a pretty solid code base here. It's not really code, it's CloudFormation templates, but it's fine. So basically, it asked more questions, if fewer questions. This time it was only like 9 questions. So I answered those. I again said, okay, here's those. If you have any questions, feel free. And sometimes I even changed my mind a little bit. So then it came through and it had more questions. Again, very few. There are a few things where I was like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Let's clarify that. Or I'm like, I kind of changed my mind on that. Let's do it that way. So then it did that. I said, if you have any questions, go ahead. And it came up with questions 4. So a 4th set of questions, which is a record for me. I've never gone through like several rounds on a chat client and then 4 rounds of questions with Kiro. But I will say that after you go through 4 rounds of questions with Kiro, after like having a pretty solid starting document or starting plan, starting idea, you really get to know. It really helps you understand what it's building. That's sometimes a problem with AI assisted development and software engineering, is that you have the plan, you give it the plan, but you don't really know how to execute it. Well, this just dug into every single little thing, and I could probably, after going through these 4 rounds of questions, hand code and come up with nearly exactly what AI came up with, because now I know what modules it's going to create. I know uh, how it's going to connect into the parent templates, what CloudFormation parameters it's going to use. I know what conditionals it's going to use. I know what security policies it's going to use, how it's going to do the naming convention, how it's going to create the service role that allows the cross-account promotion, how it's going to gate the deployment, so that you need to say, yes, test is good, I'm going to approve it, copy it over, and then wait for approval on the receiving end to say, yes, I'll accept this incoming artifact, and move on. I know that you don't need to do cross account. You could even do the same process with the approvals, but in the same account. I mean, I know how it's going to be doing all this just by it asking me questions and walking through with it. It's really nice to kind of like have that AI companion who, you know, who you can just like sit down and work with. You're not working around people's schedules or meetings and stuff like that. You're kind of going over that. It's nice having me in the loop as a human. It's nice being able to like take this, go to another group of humans, and like say, hey, this is what it's coming up with. What do you think? Any insights? Any inputs? Is there anything that we're not considering with the way that this would work in our environment? And just knowing that after all these rounds of questions and without writing any code yet, that we have a pretty solid understanding. I already have a solid understanding stuff how I'm just going to go through and read the CloudFormation templates and know every single line that it's going to do. So I'll just put that out there in terms of like when you have a good workflow, great steering documents, and if you're working with a chat agent, that it knows who you are and what you do, and it has some background knowledge of all that. It's very, very helpful, and that's how I'm able to come up with these ideas, iterate, and basically create production ready to go, not have to like wrestle with AI developed applications. We actually have something that works on first deploy, and that's been my experience using this workflow, that it takes a couple of days, but then once I actually have it do all the tasks, I have a ready to deploy application. I'm not going back. Then I go, and then it created the requirements. I think I only had like 2 changes in the requirements, after I read through it. And again, I read through every single requirement. I read through the whole thing, and it's good. When it gets to the design phase, I kind of, when I have it create from the requirements of the design, I get a little lax. I read through it, but I'm not, and I should be probably a little bit more attentive, but it's really going off what the requirements did, and after all that stuff, you kind of have fatigue, so maybe you should just like wait for the next day or have somebody else review it. But it's like I have an idea, I go through this, yeah, it looks good. And then I just have to create the tasks. Now, everything that I described, from even when I was working with the chat client, um, those ChatGPT, I was using, was it, I forget if it was Sol or Luna, but I was using a higher end reasoning model. When it comes to creating the questions and the requirements in the design, I'm using Claude Opus. And I'm not necessarily using the latest always, but I'm using Claude Opus. You really don't go through that many tokens. This one, I only went through like 300 tokens to go through the preliminary reading, the questions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the requirements, design, and tasks. I use Opus for all that. Now, I can use, and I have used, but where you really burn through tokens is executing the tasks. And this is something that I've kind of read about. I've done a little bit of research on. I even asked ChatGPT and stuff, or not just ChatGPT, but I've also, gone to Gemini as well. I was like, is there something to having like Opus or the high version of uh, GPT, do these preliminary deep dives, structural documents, and then when it comes to task execution, doing a mid tier, like Sonnet, for example. And it said yes. It said use Opus for your high reasoning, deep architectural stuff, whether it's like understanding a code base or developing your plan, your specs, all this sort of stuff. Use Opus for all that. But when it comes to executing the tasks, you've already done all the high level reasoning. You're just basically taking that and you're just like translating it um, uh, to a task. I mean, you've already got everything outlined. It already knows how it's going to do everything. You've already got design documents. A lot of times you'll even have like code snippets in the design document. So it pretty much already knows how, yeah, see, here's a code snippet. So it already like has all that already in there. You're just implementing it. And in reality, it's just following like a recipe. So you don't need to use Opus for that. You can use like Sonnet. It did not recommend Haiku or a lower level one, but um, so when I go to execute the task, I can just switch to Sonnet for that. Now, beyond that, that's pretty much my workflow. Oh, steering documents. So I do have for each project, I have a group of steering documents that I use across all my projects or most of my projects, depending upon whether it's front end or back end, Lambda or whatnot. This particular one, I have a group of steering documents, and I think that I've fine-tuned these very well. That again, when I sit down and I start coming up with a plan and spec-driven thing, it knows to look at the code base. It knows how I version everything. There's a package version, overall package version, but then each template, each script has its own version numbering. It knows all that. It will increase those. There's standards in terms of naming conventions, for the difference between Python variables, Node variables, cloud formation parameters, how I name stuff, even the logical ID name that uh, logical resource ID name that's in each of the templates. It knows about all that. It knows how I want my modules to be just the definition, as well as a good comment section about what parameters need to be in the parent template, what conditionals need to be in the parent template as well. Um, it knows the structure and all that sort of stuff. So it basically goes through that. Oh, as well as documentation, like because these templates are being used by others, so the documentation for each template needs to be up to date. So it knows that every time it creates um, spec-driven a new template or modifies a template, that it goes and updates the documentation. So that way, when I basically am done with a workflow and we've created something, one, not only does it deploy, I don't need to go back and worry about the tests. I don't need to go back and worry about the documentation. I already know it's already there. And I don't just assume that. Those are things that, because we went through the questions and requirements, I know are going to be there because it was in the requirements document. So it's it reduces my cognitive load and it ensures that everything that I produce is solid. So my best advice is when using Kiro, have a workflow and have a well-disciplined workflow with solid steering documents, a solid code base, um, a solid set of iterations and planning. Don't just rush into things. Take a few days to go through, iterate through it, ask other people questions as well as AI. Challenge yourself. Have your AI assistant act like that senior level security engineer, project manager, software engineer, platform engineer, cloud architect. Have them perform at the senior level because then you're going to get quality stuff that is not AI slop that will just work. So that's been my workflow. That has worked for me. I definitely recommend exploring a workflow similar to that because I just feel like you just get the best output. The use, I mean, you're paying for the tokens. You might as well use them effectively and efficiently, and without constantly having to iterate and refix things. And this is the workflow that I've used that has worked. So thanks for watching. Go ahead and subscribe and like this video. If you have any tips or tricks of your own when working with Kiro, or anything that would translate to working with Kiro, feel free. I do a lot, I wouldn't say a lot, but I do videos, and I create resources based upon uh, spec-driven development with Kiro, and I work on the Atlantis framework, which is basically a small tier platform that allows individuals and small organizations to get into the cloud quickly. So, have a good day.